Good afternoon. I would like to welcome everyone to the 2017 operating budget for the Zoning Committee. My name is Jiza Page, and I am the chair of the Zoning Committee. And the purpose of this public hearing today is to provide a brief overview of the Department of Building and Zoning Services 2017 budget. And we have with us today the Director of the Department, Director Scott Messer, as well as Cheryl Truesdale, the Fiscal Manager of the Department of Building and Zoning Services. And I would now like to give it over to the Director to review the budget. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Councilmember Page. Appreciate the opportunity to be here this afternoon and talk about building and zoning services and our 2017 annual budget. First, before we get into some of the numbers for the budget, I would like to give a brief overview of building and zoning services. It's pretty much what it sounds like. Building and zoning are both of the main activities that we do. Under the building side of things, we handle all permits for construction in the city, as well as plan review, reviewing all the documents for the various projects and inspections. Last year, we issued 42,500 permits and conducted over 89,000 inspections, just to give you an idea of the scope of what we do under the building area. For zoning, we also handle all the variances and rezonings, as well as graphics, various signs related to graphics, and zoning clearance, meaning every permit gets reviewed by zoning to ensure that it's in compliance with various zoning rules and regulations. We also license and register all the various contractors who are involved in construction around the city. Those are our primary activities that we do. When it comes to budget, essentially, we project our expenses for the year, and our revenue is based on all the fees that we collect from the various permits and licenses and registration. We're not connected with general fund, so we receive no general fund dollars, nor do we contribute. We essentially have a fee schedule, a codified fee schedule that's in the city code, which governs all of our fees. Those fees are designed to reimburse building and zoning for the services that we render. Any extra fees that may be generated in any given year are put into a reserve fund, so that if we do have a year where our expenses outpace our revenue, we would be able to make that up from the reserve fund. As I said, we're not a general fund, and also not only general fund, but we do not share those funds with any other department. So it's an exclusive fund specific just to building and zoning services. We try to review our fees every 5 years. The last time our fees were reviewed was in 2013. So probably in 2018 would be a likely time that we would revisit the fees that we charge for the services, various permits and licenses and so forth. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Cheryl Truesdale. As you said, Cheryl serves as our fiscal manager, and she's going to go into a few of the details of our specific numbers for 2017.
Well, thank you so much, Director. And Cheryl, before you begin your presentation, I would just like to thank my colleague, Councilmember Shannon Hardin, for joining us this afternoon. Thank you. Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you. The 2017 budget allocates just over $20.3 million from the Development Services Fund to support the Department of Building and Zoning Services. We will maintain staffing levels consistent with 2016, and this includes 148 full-time and 11 part-time positions. Our staffing costs of $16.1 million make up 79% of our budget. Our largest program is Building Services, and this includes 89 full-time positions and is budgeted at just under $10.4 million. Next is our Zoning Services section, which includes 18 full-time staff and is budgeted at just over $2 million. Our Customer Service section has a staff of 17 full-time positions and is budgeted at $1.8 million. Our Engineering section has 7 full-time employees, and its budget totals $776,000. The budget for our administrative offices total $2.2 million and includes 16 positions and is comprised of the Fiscal Office, Human Resources, Data Management, and the Director's Office. Lastly, our Internal Services budget totals just over $3 million and includes funding for technology, fleet services, mail and print services, and prorated charges. That's it.
So just to sort of follow up on one item that I did want to highlight, one of the things that is sort of our key initiative for the last year and going into next year is some vast improvements around technology. So this past year, we were able to launch many new initiatives, putting a lot of our services for permits and applications for permits online. We continue to put more and more services online. Coming up in 2017 will be the ability for contractors or architects and engineers and various people to actually submit their blueprints online in a digital fashion, and we can review those, essentially becoming mostly paperless. We also scanned millions and millions of records into an archival system so that all of the paper that comes into building and zoning services is historical as well as going forward will be digital and archived in a digital fashion instead of paper. So we have been able to divert some of our funds over the last year and going into next year to implement a lot of new technologies that have been very well received by the industry.
Great. Thank you so much, Director Messer and Cheryl. As far as just kind of what you were talking about with updating and doing the plans online, I know that you had also have like an expedited plans process. Could you talk about that briefly and how successful it has been?
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Page. Earlier this year, I think it was June, we were able to launch an initiative for expedited plans review. What essentially is the situation is we're governed by MOUs with the industry as well as state law, which requires us to have certain time period to review plans. So state law mandates that we review blueprints and plans within a 30-day time period. There are occasions when contractors really need an expedited review. They really need their plans as soon as possible, and waiting that 30 days would be a challenge. However, we were prohibited from taking those plans out of order and giving preferential treatment. What we were able to do, though, is implement a system where after hours, in a separate process altogether for a fee, we would be able to review those plans in an expedited manner. So it doesn't impact anyone who submits their plans as they normally would. It's a completely separate process that we're able to do for a fee for contractors. And we have literally dozens and dozens of contractors who take advantage of that every month. And it's been very well received. And I think it's, time is money for a lot of contractors. And there are circumstances where, such as a build out of a tenant space where a lot of the construction is already done on the outside, and really we're just trying to get a tenant finish. And the sooner it can get done, the sooner someone can move in. So it's been well received.
Thank you, Director. Are there any other questions from my colleagues? Councilmember Harden.
Thank you, Councilmember Chair Page, and thank you, Director, for the presentation. Last year, I worked closely with your department when Ryan Schick was with you guys, and so as chair of the Small and Minority Business Committee, what offerings, and especially as you move next year into the 111 building, how are we still working to make sure that small businesses are able to, kind of just off of what you were just talking about, are able to get in and get out, be as accessible as possible through your department?
Councilmember Harden, thanks for your question. And yes, we do still do a lot of initiatives and things for small businesses. Of course, the website that we started when Ryan Schick was the Small Business Concierge is still in existence and is still available for a variety of businesses to be able to access and have a good outline of how to use city services and move forward with what permits are needed and so forth. But beyond that, we do a number of things for small businesses. First and foremost, we do have what we call a preliminary review process, which allows any customer, and a lot of times they would be small business customers who aren't familiar with our processes and procedures. For no charge whatsoever, they're able to schedule an appointment with our office and we access and bring together to the table a variety of folks from all the different departments around the city. So whether it be transportation or utilities or whatever it may be, we bring all of those people to the table, and we have a meeting where we review what project someone might be interested in starting, and for free we give them advice and guidance on how to move forward. We do several of those every single week. So we schedule those typically on Wednesdays and Thursdays, and we're pretty full on both of those days. And so a number of small businesses take advantage of that, come in, show us their project. We actually encourage people to do that even before they commit to certain properties, certain business ventures that they may have. Come meet with us first so that we can represent any zoning challenges that might be, in existence on a particular property, or give some guidance and some better estimates of timelines and expectations. It's been very, very well received. We also have very good partnerships with a variety of organizations that represent small businesses. So, for example, CORA, the Central Ohio Restaurant Association, we have traditionally did at least one, if not two, trainings every single year for that group, where new restaurant ventures, people who are interested in opening up new restaurants, can get sort of a basic A to Z training from my staff on all of the different permits and processes that you need, how the health department works in that process, and how a variety of things happen. So those partnerships have proven to be very beneficial with the organizations who represent those folks. But we, and as you mentioned, we also feel that one of the best ways that we've been able to help is through our technology. And so making services easier. Sometimes it's hard for a small business to have the same level of resources for inspections and for a lot of the things that typically large contractors might have. So, every inspector now carries an iPhone. We result inspections right on the spot. We send out text and alert messages for small business owners so they can see whether their inspections passed immediately in live real time. So we've done a lot of different things, make things available online so that it saves resources of having to come to and from the building department physically. So all of those things have really been, I think, very helpful to small businesses.
Thank you, Councilmember Harden. I do have a few more questions. Can you briefly discuss the change in staffing from 2016 to 2017 with reducing 2 of the full-time positions?
We really didn't reduce any positions. What happened is that the finance department wanted to reflect the 2 positions that we pay for public service in their budget. And their budget document should have gone up by 2. So we really have still 148 positions. It's just that it's shown in their section of the budget this year. They chose to show it differently this year, but there's no change.
Thank you. Can you, and you've both already kind of talked about this, just where the revenue comes from for your department, and understanding that, it's not from the general revenue, it's really through your permits and your fees. And can you talk about your expectations for 2017 and kind of where you were at the end of this year?
I can tell you that this year we are going to probably finish the year just over 1% up from 2015. So when we look at going into 2017, we actually use a pretty complex projection model that takes into account a lot of seasonality as well as historical data. Nothing we have is able to predict the future, but we are able to go back several years and track on a month-by-month basis how our revenue has changed, either increased or decreased from year to year, take into account seasonality, take into account trends of whether, say, commercial permitting is up or residential permitting is up, multifamily, whatever it may be. We have a pretty extensive statistical model that then predicts based on trends where we expect to be next year. We also look at indications and indicators of where business is going. So, for example, if you are to look at rezoning applications and various variance applications, or if you were to look at some of our preliminary engineering site review plans that are submitted, those are typically indicative of permits and fees and things that are going to be happening 6 to 9 months down the road. And so we're able to take a look at those and project out, 6 to 9 months from now, where do we expect to be on permit volume? So given all of those things, we come up with a hard target of what we think revenue will be in any given year. So for 2017, we are at, no, that's our cash balance for revenue projection for next year, 19.4 million. Yep.
All right, thank you so much. And then my final question, as our residents drive down Front Street, they can see the new building being constructed. And can you just talk briefly, about the continuous construction there, when you expect to have your department moved in as well?
Yeah, we're very excited. Thank you for bringing that up, Councilmember. We're very excited to move into a new facility that right now the plan would be by the end of next year. So essentially this time next year, we would hope to be occupying a new building, which most of the exterior is getting close to being finished. And then they'll switch gears and start working on the interior of the building. The first 2 floors of that building will be reserved for building and zoning services and other permits that are needed involved in the construction process. So one of the most exciting things that we're able to do with this new building is bring together and co-locate a variety of different services that need to be accessed by different developers and applicants. So folks from public service will be moving into that building associated with the development process, as will public utilities, as will our department. So historic preservation, a number of different areas where currently maybe someone would have to go to 3 or 4 different locations to get what they need. They will now be able to get all of those services in one location. The first floor will be a brand new service center, customer service center, where customers will come in to obtain their permits, and then all of our inspectors and our plans examiners, everyone will be located there. So we're pretty excited.
Great, and I'm excited as well. And thank you for the work you're doing, not only to improve the efficiency as far as the permitting process, with now you being able to do things online with the expedited reviews, but also the thought behind moving actually the one-stop shop into one place. So that's exciting. I look forward to this time next year. And again, thank you, Dr. Messer and Cheryl Truesdale, for your presentation this afternoon on the zoning budget, building and zoning services budget. We do have one public speaker this afternoon. I would like to ask Mr. Robert Grinch to come down to the podium. Mr. Grinch, thank you for joining us. You have 3 minutes, and if you could let us know, again, your name and any organizations that you are representing. And thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Director. My name is Robert Grinch, and I reside in Columbus. I live on the west side, and I'm active with a neighborhood organization called the West Scioto Area Association, which we hope to become the West Scioto Area Commission at some time in the future. Something I'd like to mention today is regard to the zoning case logs that are posted on the city's website. For those familiar with the logs, when you visit the site, you'll see a listing of the different variances and rezoning applications that the city has logged in. And typically when you click upon one of those areas, and for me, frequently I go to the Development Commission case logs, and you'll see projects listed there where they have the applicant's name, who's typically a developer, and there'll be a notice next to that that says active or closed, which provides the status of the application as it's going through the city process. What I've discovered is it's great that the city has this convenient tool for the citizens to learn about where a rezoning has been proposed. What's a little bit frustrating is over time, as the original application changes due to whatever factors, including negotiations with folks in the planning offices of the city and Department of Development, whatever, the original application documentation is never updated to make it for convenient for citizens to know the status of the rezoning application. So it's great when the initial information is posted and it will show site plans or accompanying limitation text that the applicant has provided. But some of these projects go through this process for years. And I've had one recently that's gone on for 18 months. And again, when you visit the website, you may see the documentation that was originally posted, 6 months or a year ago. And ideally, it would be great if when we went to that website, we could see what the current status is. And for instance, on a, say, a multifamily residential development where a developer has agreed to reduce the number of buildings and corresponding dwelling units, that we could see their most current site plan that would reflect that change. Or if a developer makes a commitment to provide some buffering, perhaps by adding a screen fence or some plants. So, thank you. So generally, it's great that we have this tool and that the information is initially available. It would be nice if funds were appropriated in the current budget for the Building and Zoning Services Department to maintain the current log and a current status. Thank you.
Thank you so much again for coming down, Mr. Grinch. And I would just like to give Director Messer the opportunity. He can speak with you afterwards, regarding your suggestion. And also, if you could just briefly let anyone watching and Mr. Grinch know, although it may not be updated through the computer system, can they call your office and get current information on any zoning application?
Absolutely. And thank you, Mr. Grinch, for your comments, and thank you, Councilmember Page, for the opportunity to respond. I will follow up and get some more detail around what might be something that we can do from a website standpoint, even if it's not to update the exact applications, because those are official documents that we need to keep to show, what was actually applied for. It's also true that as zonings proceed through a process, they can be subject to amendments and change. And then typically, what would be available would be the final iteration. So final variances and final information is available. As a matter of fact, on our website, we recently updated our zoning map to where you can literally go on our zoning map and click on any parcel anywhere in the city and have a link automatically to any zoning variances, any type of legislation that was passed on that property. So any final version that is being submitted to City Council has its own sort of public record process that is available to folks to see. But in terms of being able to track it as it goes through the process and see maybe what's being proposed or not proposed or where things stand, I'll have to give that some thought and follow up with Mr. Grinch and see if there might be something that we can do.
Thank you so much, Director, for your response, and also for mentioning if it is a council variance, we do have an online system that residents can look at as well once we pass that legislation to see where it is and how the project will be. So again, thank you for coming down, Mr. Grinch. And that concludes our hearing this afternoon. Again, I'd like to thank you, Director Messer and Cheryl Truesdale, for your hard work and dedication, and also your presentation this afternoon. I would like to thank my team, Sherry Martin and Rolanda Hampton, for all of their hard work in putting this hearing together, as well as Matt Erickson and Angie Dwyer. They put up with me all the time, and I appreciate all the work that you have done as well. Also, CTV and our viewing and listening audience. Have a good afternoon.